All right, let's talk about thumbnails and zooming and cropping. So what we're going to do is do our samples of our thumbnails, and we're going to try to find something that works to crop in. The requirements for this composition is to have it go off the page on 3 different sides. So in order to do that, we need to crop our photos and kind of figure that out. If your photo has one already that you zoomed in on, then you will sketch it the way you want it to look on your thumbnail sketch. But for this practice, you're going to do 3. Now, you could do multiple thumbnails of the same photo and play with how you crop it, or you can do 3 different photos. That is your choice based on your photos, okay? So what I want to talk about is when you look at, I drew a line right here so you could see this line, that this photo is lined up. Do not line up your objects. We want overlapping. And yes, there's some overlapping with the leaves, but it's not enough. We want overlapping. This one overlaps. The ceramic bowl overlaps the hourglass. The ceramic bowl overlaps the vase. There's different heights that we have, and we have a background on the bottom, or we have something underneath. Same thing over here. These are nice. We have some overlapping, but how will these crop? And that's the question that we're going to play with on our thumbnail. Same thing down here. We have some nice overlapping. Nobody's expecting you to do the backgrounds. Okay, we're not looking at the background. I got a lot of busy stuff going on in the background. That's not going to go to the drawing, so don't worry about that. If it's a distraction for you, then you put something, put it up against a wall like this one is, and that'll help you see it better. So let's get started. I kind of started with this one right here, and I have some paper to help us on the other ones. But what I want to point out is that you can do this with your phone. Your phone has a great cropping ability, and that works the best for this project. Crop your photo, play with it that way. It'll help you see it. Okay, so I like this one, and what I particularly like about this is this line that comes in. I like this strong line, so I'm going to think about, I like that. I like this line as it comes down. I like that there is, he's about kind of centered. I'm not as big a fan of that, but let's try one where he's centered right there, and then I can come in here. Not sure, he's about half, I'd say 3/4, a little more than like 3/4, about halfway down. Now I feel like he's actually kind of a little more crooked than what I have just because of the angle. I have another vase right here, little guy, and he's actually closer. So you see how I'm playing with my shape. So that means this guy needs to be a little bigger. See how I'm playing with the shapes. I'm not sitting here freaking out and erasing. I left my line. This line tells me where I was, and this line tells me where I'm going, and it's good to see that shift. If I erase, then sometimes it's like starting back over, and I don't know what I did, and I keep making the same mistake over and over again. It's really annoying. So it's nice to have seeing what's happening, letting yourself see that change. That's why we don't always erase. And don't feel that need to erase every single line and make it all perfect. So right now what we're looking for is composition. I'm not putting a lot of detail in things. I'm really trying to see where my composition is. And I'm not a big fan of what I'm looking at right now. I'm not a big fan of this. I feel like it all needs to be a little bigger. Okay, so right now I'm going to hold off on this one, and I'm going to try a different one. Now, I already know I don't like this one, but I want to have that conversation with you because that conversation is important. I'm going to draw the background on this one because I think it actually helps it. But that conversation I think will help you. So if I choose to do this one, and I crop this. Now again, you could do this with your phone, but remember I need to have it go off on 3 sides. So here I am trying to crop it. And I can look at it, and the problem is here I have 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put this right here. That may work. I'm not as big a fan on this one. The overlapping is minimal. There's a lot of empty space, and I don't know how interesting all this negative space is going to be. So let's maybe come over here to a different angle. Same thing happens. As I put this down, and I have this space is more interesting, but again, this space is more interesting, but I'm not a big fan of this side. It feels very vertical, very stagnant. So what about this guy right here? This one to me is better, but I'd actually bring that in quite a bit. I want to keep my proportions. That's only 2 sides. So that may not work. That's only 2 sides. So I could bring this in a little more, but I lose the bottoms. I lose the bottoms. On this composition, you really need the bottom of that object or it does not look good. So let's try coming down and focusing on the lemons like that. Much better, much better. That shape is still a rectangle, which matches our rectangle over here. So let's try that one. And this is definitely a simpler option than this one right here. This is definitely for your more advanced student. There's a lot more going on. Those shapes are more complex. This is a nice simple option if you're learning. So depending on your skill set, think about how you crop. I don't want it to be abstract. Do not crop in so much that it's abstract, but do crop in. So now when I look at this, it's about halfway. So I'm going to draw a line about halfway. Okay. And then, oops, that's not really halfway now, is it? Okay, so I'm going to move this right here. About halfway. And now I have this egg, this big egg. It's pretty big. It's pretty big because we've zoomed in. So I'm going to draw a nice big egg. And remember, when you go take this egg and you blow it up to a 12 by 16, it's going to be even bigger. Be larger than life. It'll be larger than life. Actually, I think I'm going to make it a little smaller. Get my lemon in there. So again, notice that I am not worried too much about the drawing. My goal here is to find the shapes. And this actually comes down below here, so I can start to shape that. Now I can erase a tad, start to see more of what I have. I think my egg is a little big. If you look at the egg, see the lemon? See how if I go across, it's smaller, so I'm going to move my egg down. And it goes off that corner. So again, thumbnail is for placement. You see how I'm paying attention to some of those details. I redraw, then erase. I redraw and then erase. So as I'm doing this, I can really start to kind of figure out my proportions and my placement of things. And that's how I can get that overlap, that feeling of space going on here. And now I can add a little more details to make it feel a little more realistic. Maybe some shadows, because the shadows become part of that composition, especially in this one. That shadows are very important. Now, I think my shape is a little different. I could shift all of this over a little bit, but I think my proportion, if you look at this, this is skinnier than our proportion. So that's why I'm losing a little bit more of the apple that I wanted. So here we go. So that is perfectly acceptable. There's a lot of values that we'll have in here. This is a big cylinder. There's nice values over in here. So this is an option. But I want to go back to this guy up here. So instead of going, I already know that these don't crop well. So I'm not going to mess with those. I'm not going to mess with that one. So these are really my 2 that I have to work with. So let's go back up to here. So one of the problems I have that I didn't like about my thumbnail was how much space is over here. Now, there's a lot going on in that photo that's not in here, like all the beautiful fabrics and things like that. So it could be that it's better, you know, it works out. But I also know from experience that students, when you guys are working, sometimes those details get very hard to do. So I want to make this fail-proof for you guys. So let's think about like cropping that in, not giving you so much of that detail. Now the problem is when I've got to keep it proportional. If I crop in too much, I lose the beautiful vines. Oh, that's my Sharpie. So let's try another one. So I'm going to have the vines come this way. Basically, I'm going to make everything a little bit larger. I'm going to make it a little bit larger, fill in that space a little bit more. And maybe too large. We'll see. I'm going to leave that here until I get some of this other stuff in here. So I'm going to have this go off the page a little more. But I don't really see right here, so let's draw our circle right here. Little lizard on there. And then we have our fabric line. This actually goes back. That's the problem. Let's take this guy a little further back and a little taller. Let's say about there. All right, now let's erase and see if where we need to be. And I like to show you, I'm really talking through the process so that you get to hear my choices and why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's very important. Like I said, this is a more complex drawing, right? It's just a more complex drawing. So what happens is you got to think about what's happening, what's overlapping what, and figure out if that's going to work. Now, I think this would work beautifully, but like I said, this is a definitely more complex choice. So keep that in mind. But now I'm starting to, and there's a lot you can fill up with those leaves. There's a lot you can fill up with those leaves in that space. So I think that would work with the fabric and all that nice stuff. I do think on this one, the background is kind of nice. It's just kind of a nice field in the background that will help break up the space because it's so busy. But it is up to you. Simpler shapes definitely will help you focus. More complex, if you've done art through middle school and you've done still lifes before, challenge yourself and do the more complex still life.